Welcome to the SARE Ladies podcast, the sister brand of Subtle Asian Real Estate, where our mission is to get more people that look like us participating in the real estate industry. We invite experts to not just talk about real estate, but also about our unique identity as Asian women and the cultural values that shape who we are as investors. I'm Anita Wong.
And I'm Tiffany Lee. We're both real estate agents and investors based in the Bay Area and New York City. Whether you're a seasoned real estate pro or just starting out, there's something for everyone here. So pour yourself a glass of wine or boba tea and join us as we celebrate the achievements and unleash the untapped potential of AAPI women in the real estate industry.
Welcome to the SARE Ladies podcast.
Now let's get on with the show. But first, a word from one of our fabulous sponsors. Hey Ryan, how's your student housing room hacking system going?
It's going awesome. So we're pulling in $40,000 a month, and I'm getting ready to quit my W-2 in about a month.
That is awesome. Congratulations. Was it easy to pull off?
No, I basically had to scale it over a course of 7.5 years. But really using the room hacking method, I was able to skyrocket my portfolio so quickly.
That's awesome. I'm sure other people would love to learn how to do this. Is this something that you're teaching?
Yes, I do. I teach a 6-month coaching program. It's one-on-one coaching with me through Zoom calls just like this. And basically we go through market analysis, deal analysis. We'll cover renovations to increase your profitability, as well as the marketing and the management and creating a full system for yourself along with teams. So you basically have this cash flow for life. You should be bringing in about $1,500 per month in cash flow per property.
That sounds great. Where do I sign up if I want to learn more about this?
Yeah, so we actually have a discount, a 17% discount if you go through my website, www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/SARE Ladies.
Awesome. Again, that's newbierealestateinvesting.com/SARE Ladies for that 17% discount. Thanks so much, Ryan. We'll see you at SareCon.
All right, thanks, Tiffany. I'll see you guys there too.
Now on to the show.
Hello again, sorority family, to another episode of the SARE Ladies podcast. We are so excited to have one of our favorite people on this podcast, Giang Nguyen. So Yang has been on this podcast before. If you haven't caught her amazing episode, it was beautiful, awesome episode about, her family. It was our feature for Asian Heritage Month. So please catch the link in our show notes if you have not caught that episode.
Before we signed off on the last episode, we made a fun creative discovery that Yang is actually a competitive salsa dancer for the past 5 years, right, Yang?
Yes.
That's awesome. And she said that this is one of her big wins on what real estate investment has allowed her to do. And I want to make sure we touch on that a few times on this episode as well, because that's all I wanted to talk about. But we ran out of time the last episode. So this is going to be it. This is the one. So something to consider once you achieve financial and time freedom, when you eventually get to leave your W-2s, listeners, you can have more time to pursue your creative passions. So in Yang's case, it's salsa dancing. I know in Nita's case, she's like Picasso. She does all her lovely drawings, and she's doing figure drawings now too of like all the naked people that she draws, which I love. That's what Anita likes to spend her time on. She likes staring at naked people and drawing them. That's why she tries to take me to a K-spa. That's Anita's passion.
Oh boy, you'll have to catch that also in another episode. It's been one of our episodes.
Our callback is Anita is a pervert. That's my joke. I love
it. Great. This is right. Okay. Well, this is why we don't segue with Tiffany. Thank you for sharing that with salsa, because for some reason it always ends with nudity. So anyway,
salsa is a sexy dance. That's why my mind went there. It's very sexy.
Yes. Yeah. And maybe if we find a video of Yang doing one,
oh my God.
Do you have a video you can send us from your competitions? Can we put it in the video?
Yes. I could send you a video.
It'll be in the show notes, y'all.
No, I want to run it. Can we run it at the end of this episode? All right. When at the end of this episode, we're gonna do a callback. Yeah, is it on YouTube somewhere? Can we find it on YouTube somewhere?
I could potentially find on YouTube, or if not, I can upload it. It's on my phone.
Ooh, oh my God. Anita's like, Tiffany, what? You're
Right.
Okay.
Well,
Bring it
so
back.
this episode's about online auctioning.
By the way,
By the
guys,
way.
you can subscribe to our Patreon, and you will have additional bonus footage of Yang's salsa dancing.
Ooh.
Support SARE Ladies. I'm like pimping your video. Support SARE Ladies. We're
And Anita's nude drawing.
yeah.
Right.
On Anita's new drawing classes. Hey, if you guys support our Patreon, Anita will draw a naked picture of you. That's one of the.
No, thank you.
If you're going to SARECon, Anita will square off 10 minutes for each person.
Absolutely not.
Here's our hotel room number. Come on
Oh
in.
dear God. I'm not telling Tiffany my hotel room number. She's on her own.
I thought we were rooming together. Okay, anyway.
We're not. Anyway, online auctioning.
I love we're not. Okay, go on.
Okay,
Oh,
well,
no.
to all seriousness, we're going to be talking about online auctioning today because we know that online auctioning is probably one of the best ways that you can snag a really good deal in the market. And it's definitely one of those, one of those things that is very scary if you haven't, heard about it or done it before, and kind of like you're diving right into the deep end. And so for all that are interested in this method, we brought Yang to tell us about her experience. And if you don't know Yang and didn't catch the last episode, Yang is the founder of One River Capital, and she's a seasoned multifamily syndicator, retired published scientist, and an immigrant from Vietnam. Her passion is to help busy professionals and immigrants build passive income and build generational wealth through real estate investing. So with that in mind, let's not talk about salsa dancing and let's talk about online auctions. Welcome.
Woo.
Welcome
Thanks
back,
so much,
Yang.
Tiff and Anita, for having me. What a fun intro.
Yeah.
We try because we had our warm up the first episode. So
Yeah.
we'll jump into it. We'll save everyone some
Mhm.
time. What is online auctioning and what drew you to buy multifamily properties this way?
Yeah, so online auctioning has been around for a while. It's essentially when you purchase a property through auction, but it's all now virtual. And it actually has become more popular since the pandemic. A lot of in-person auction at like the county level actually has moved online with the pandemic. So there are now even more online auctioning opportunities available. So I personally, online auctioning is not my only strategies of getting properties. So for all of us as real estate investors, getting leads and getting properties to analyze and eventually to submit an LOI and put it on a contract, right? Is the one thing that we always want to do is to have a pipeline of deals. So for me, I see online auctioning as one of the strategy that I can get more deals in my pipeline to increase the deal flow.
Awesome. And that's a great segue to the next question. Can you walk us through the steps of an online auction process for buying, for buying a multifamily property from the process of finding it to submitting a bid and then finally to closing the deal? And I'll add, and in what way is this similar to choreography and salsa dancing?
Bringing it back. Awesome. So let me first walk you through kind of the steps for an online auction. So first, even thinking about online auction, the first step you always want to do is where, right? Where do you even find these online auctions? So we can I'll tell you some of the website now, but we can probably put it in the show notes maybe. But like in order to buy, say, like single family or 2 to 4 units or smaller multis, you have like auction.com, Hubzu, Service Link Auction, Realty Bid, and bidforassets.com. So those are all the sites that you will see a lot of listings for the smaller multi-family size and also the single families. On the larger multifamily or even commercial real estate, you have Prexy.com and 10-X.com. So these are often have online auctions for like very large multifamily all across the US. So the first thing that you want to do, which is completely free to do if you're considering any of this, is to go to the site and sign up for these email alerts. So pro tip here is you want to set up a specific emails for all of these alerts so you're not crowding your own inbox, right? So what I did is I set up a separate email address and then use these link to set up alerts to receive alerts of any properties in the markets that I'm looking in that meet my criteria. So these completely free to do. And you can actually just go through and look at them to actually just familiarize yourself with the process and just get some exposure to what that looks like, right? Completely free, free things to get into. Okay, so now that you just set up alerts, what would be the next step? One thing that I really want people to walk away with is that at all of these auction sites, all of them have separate rules and regulation that you really want to familiarize yourself with before you start bidding. So any of these sites will have their own rules and regulation that they post online. So you should all be able to find like a downloadable that you can read through, right? So one of my core value, or not core value, but one of my strategy is always learning how to balance the risk and the reward, right? For me, buying online auction is a high risk. So in order for me to mitigate that risk, I want to be very prepared to understand all the rules and regulation before I start bidding and understanding my market before I start bidding on this market, right? So this is where a lot of preparation comes in place before you can actually start bidding. So I'll point out a couple of things that you want to look out for when you go through the documents and the process. So you definitely want to understand what is the registration requirement, right? So in order to become a bidder, there is certain registration requirement that you have to satisfy before they even allow you to bid on the property. So familiarize yourself with that. The second thing to understand is to know the bidding instruction. The bidding instruction will vary. You may have different time period. You may have different amount of time you can bid. What does that look like? Really understand the bidding instruction. The third thing you want to understand is the fees and the closing costs. What is the additional fees that you will have to take into account? Who is responsible for paying the closing costs? So definitely pay attention to that. The fourth thing is understand the purchase agreement. In a lot of these cases, it's not that you're under contract and now like, oh, wait, hold on, let me go grab my lawyers to grab a purchase agreement. The purchase agreement is often set by the bidding company. So you really want to read that through and maybe even have your lawyer read that through for you to understand what this purchase agreement means, because you most likely won't be able to negotiate or really change a lot of this detail. Fifth thing you want to understand is what happened if you were the winning bid and what happened if not. So understand what that looks like. If you end up winning the bid, do you have to put in deposit right away within 24 hours? What's the deposit amount? And understand all that, right? The final thing you want to pay attention to is the closing process. So how long do you have to close before you lose out deposit? And what does that look like? Do you have to close in cash? Do you have to close? Can you take out a mortgage? Understand all of that. Now, where do you get all of this information that I just talked about? All of the website will have a specific link that it have all these documents that you can go through. Most of the online auction will also have what they call like a auction specialist that is assigned specifically for a deal. These are the people that you want to have conversations with to make sure that you understand all the guidelines and the rules, okay? So those are some tips to understand how do you prepare for this process. Let me talk about my own experience becoming a registered bidder for this property that we bought. So last September, my partner and I got under contract for a 42 unit in Reading, PA. This was purchased through an online foreclosure auction. So there's a lot of drama here. So in order to even become a bidder, right? It actually, even before we could even take step into the property to view the project, they want to only let people who are registered bidder to go out view the project. Their requirement including two things. One, they want a proof of fund, and two, they want a $10,000 deposit. So now the proof of fund, right? For us, usually just mean like, hey, I'm working with the bank. Here's how much I'm approved for. Or like, hey, here's my maybe bank statement. Or even like, hey, here's what I have, the lender might allow me to purchase up to, even on the commercial side, right? So for them, usually for the online foreclosure auction, what they means is, can you show us your bank statements with millions of dollars before they would even let me view this property? And for me, I don't have millions of dollars in the bank account to actually purchase this property all cash. So what I had to do is to have a lot of conversations with the bidding specialist, telling them that like, hey, we are very experienced in this market. We're very interested in this property. And with our experience and our interest, we're gonna close. So we were able to negotiate with them to show them like, hey, we're serious and we're definitely your top buyers, even though we are not satisfying your requirement for a cash statement. So they were okay with us showing a lender's letters showing that, hey, the lender would allow us to borrow up to this point. So this actually required a lot of conversation with not only the brokers, but also the auction specialists and also with our lenders, right? In everything, my top key things, and this is a great practical tip for people who are even good, anything in real estate, right? You always want to advocate for yourself. And so you always want to pick 2 or 4 things that you're really strong at and keep repeating that to your lenders, to your brokers, to your property managers, anyone you meet, because these are the materials that in our case, the brokers and the auction specialists actually use this material to advocate for us to their sellers so that the seller actually make an exception for us to become a registered bidder. So we were able to view the property without actually becoming a registered bidder. And we actually got approved to bid 3 hours before bidding closing. It was how intense this whole process was. It's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of like, hey, we send them our like resume, so to speak, like our real estate resume. We show up with contractor. We show up with a lot of people to show them how serious we are about this property. But yeah, so we got approved to bid 3 hours before bidding close and ended up become a winning bidder for this project. So yeah, that is certainly a really fun project. And I will tell you this tidbit. We got under contract for this actually at the very last day of my W-2. So here I am sitting at work on my last day of my W-2, actually with a bubble tea, true Asian style. I have my bubble tea and this is online on a computer. And the only thing wild is it's almost like a sport because you can see like a clock ticking down and you can see like, okay, it was starting at like 800,000. And then every time you click, the price just went up to 50,000. So I'm like, okay, gotta be careful with what I'm clicking. And this whole thing was quite emotional, I guess, in a sense. It's just because, you can see the clock is ticking. You can see how many bidding is going on. You can see like, okay, if you click another time, it's another 250K or another 100K. And this is why I stress that you really have to know your rules and regulation because in online bidding, when the clock is running down, your emotion is running high. You really want to know what's the top point that you're going to stop at, right? Because you really don't want to click and be 250K over what you can actually buy this property for. So definitely know your numbers. For me, I set what I call like a soft limit and a hard limit because I know myself, right? So I want to kind of prepare myself like, okay, I'm reaching my soft limit here. Okay, here's my hard limit. I'm really gonna stop. So have discussion with your partner, get that number in place before one click and you're 250K over what you could pay for and you're completely screwed. So in our case, right, this is a funny story. Literally our property managers was like projecting this website on their TV screen in their office. And we're all texting one another. It was like, is that you? Is that your bid? Or is that like someone else? And we all like, that's you. Like, yes, that's me. That was my bid. So that was like, we're all like watching this clock countdown. And I kid you not, this is also again why you really got to understand the rule and regulation, right? here's the clock ticking. You're like, okay, great. 2 minutes, I'm the highest bid. But here's the thing. If someone was to put in a bid with 2 minutes to go, the clock get extended. So this has become a longest few minutes of my life because I'm like, okay, looks like we'll be a winning bid. And then someone make a bid and then the clock extend another few minutes, right? I understand there's
Oh my
rules and reasons to this because they want to make sure people have enough time to respond. But I'm like, oh, this is too long of a few minutes. And so what the other thing I forgot to mention is for online, I think most bidding in general, they would have is called like a minimum reserve. So that's kind of considered their floor price, so to speak. Now, it doesn't mean that if the minimum reserve is not met that they won't sell, but they're usually more likely to sell if the minimum reserve is met. Now, the thing is they won't tell you what that minimum reserve is. So, but understand that if that minimum reserve is met, they will let you know. And then the clock is extended for another 4 minutes. So you really just gotta like set rules, set that regulation, and just be able to like, okay, here's what I'm gonna go for. Here's what we're gonna do. And then yeah, be able to be comfortable with one click and you are a couple 100,000 further into the price. But yeah, it was definitely a great experience. We got a winning bid, so yay.
Congratulations. Yeah. I love
you.
how excited and heated you got talking
Oh,
about the
gosh.
online auction process. And this is gonna I was like, you could my mic was on mute, but I was laughing because I used to be a professional poker player and I was like, Yang is like, there's so many Vietnamese people in casinos. And I was like, Yang is just like, to you explaining the bidding process. I was like, that's the Vietnamese coming out in her. That like, she's like, I got my soft stop. I got my hard stop. I know where my limit is. I promise I know where my limit is. Was that you? And so I was just like, that's so funny.
Gosh. Yeah, I will be a terrible poker player because I am definitely not one of those like, oh yeah, I'm calm and collected. I'm like, oh, like, is this like, are we the winning bid? And so I had a video of like me recording the screen because I'm like, oh, the clock is counting and it say like you're the highest bidder, and I'm just like, oh, couple more second. And then you know what's the wild thing happened was like the clock stopped and then like nothing happened. It's not even like, congrats, you're the winner. It's just like nothing happened.
Confetti.
And so yeah, and so I'm over here like, okay, like is that it? Like, are we good? Are we good to go? Or like, is there like another couple minutes? So I was like, really, it was like a wide process. And like our other partner was actually in her way to like fly to Spain. So we're all here, just like different places all around and just like texting of like, yes, that is me. That is not me. Like, oh my God. So yeah, it was quite a fun and emotionally high process, I want to say, maybe. Quite so intense. Funny. And of course, I have my bubble tea to support me. So I do
want to ask you about, and I love that you went into this already pre-planned with your limits, right? And and I like that a lot because I think that's like, it's like negotiation 101. You know, it's like you want to go in there with what you're you want to pre-plan your reactions. You know, it's like, so you want to buffer your emotions, really. So can you talk about how you set those parameters up with yourself and your partners? Sounds like how many investors did you have?
Hey, we're going to take a little break, but in the meantime, here's a shameless plug for one of our amazing sponsors. Dr. Giang Nguyen and her husband, Dr. Jaime Gonzalez, both optometrists by trade and owners of multiple multi-million-dollar optometry practices in the Dallas area, founded Black Steel Investment Group with a passion to invest to impact. With the foundation forged on 3 pillars, integrity, community, and legacy, they put their investors at the forefront of everything they do. The couple are both seasoned, full-time multifamily investors, syndicators, and asset managers who, together with their investors, have invested in over 6,900 units as general and/or limited partners in Texas, Arizona, Florida, and the Carolinas, with total assets valued at over $480 million. Juan and Jaime are always working to find new investment opportunities for their investors. The couple enjoys traveling the world for delicious food and interesting cultures with their 8-year-old daughter Athena and have a puppy named Coco Ollie. Now on to the show.
Yeah, so in this case, we have 4 general partners, and then we actually syndicate this deal. So we brought investor on, and I can definitely talk more about that process of, when it happens from winning bid to close, right? But let's back up a little bit and talk about how we set our perimeters. So this, as I mentioned before, right, one of my strategy, or one of the things I always want to focus on, even for myself and for our investors, is that we always want to balance out the risk and the reward, right? So as I mentioned, online auction is a high risk purchase. So we always want to make sure that we assume the worst, and that we actually leave a lot of room for these unknown. And it has to be very profitable for it to make sense, right? Because otherwise, I would just buy a stabilized property, get a lower, return, and be okay with that. So in our case, we underwrote this just like any other multifamily property that we underwrote, right? We would probably definitely have to look at a cap rate, look at price point, look at potential rent. The good thing about this for us is that we are very experienced in this market. So already my partner and I invest heavily in this market. We have property manager in place. We have construction in place. And actually our property manager used to manage this building before it switched to the last owner. So we actually had a lot of that background information. So that's why I feel confident, like being very bullish on this property, because we already have a lot of these things set up for us, right? So what I mentioned about balancing out that risk and reward, we always want to figure out how we can mitigate the risk for our investors. So because I was mainly underwriting this property, I was able to understand, like, okay, at what point is this price no longer make sense? Because let me back up and talk to you a little bit about the due diligence process. And it's very important to know from an online auction perspective too, right? Is that you are gonna be going in with very limited information. So for a lot of online auction, one, you may not be able to view the property. Two, if you were able to view the property, which we did, you could only view a couple of units and you could not view all the units, right? You really don't have time for your inspection before you start bidding or even during your due diligence. So we had to assume a lot. We had to assume that we are going to replace all 42 units, that we're going to rehab all 42 units. We're assume that we're going to have to replace a lot of mechanicals. And we assume that we also, exterior we can see, right? But we had to assume a lot of this because we simply just don't know. Now, one thing I do want to mention is for online auction, and I think this is for most of them, and definitely in my case, is that once you become a winning bid, there is no due diligence period. I have to submit my $10,000 of deposit, right? If I become a winning bid and I don't move forward, I will lose that 10K. Now, in order to keep moving, we have to submit 10% of earnest money deposit within 24 hours. And that money went hard day one. What that meant is it's not refundable. So once we submit that deposit, if we don't close, we will lose that deposit. Any inspection we do from when we went under contract to the end is just for our information only. And there's no negotiation in price. There's none of that, right? So we knew all of this go into place. So that's why we had to take all of that into account, assume that we had to replace everything, and take that into our construction budget for it to make sense. I can happily report that it was worth it because we got under contract. Our bidding was accepted at 2.7 million, and the as-is appraisal was 3.9. So we already coming in with like 1.2 million in equity, and we had like a lot of room for that equity. So for me, right, that makes sense to assume all this risk and assuming that high construction budget because we know that we have a lot of equity coming in. So all of that to say is that I want to make sure listeners understand that online auction is a high risk way to purchase property. So you definitely want to make sure it is very worth your time and the risk that you're assuming. So you definitely want to build in a higher profit margin for this to be worth the risk that you're taking.
What kind of loan did you have on this property? And I
Yeah.
know that it really does talk about that risk, right? Like
Mhm.
what kind of loan did
Mhm.
your investors also were they comfortable with? Because it's a very high stakes way to purchase a multifamily project. So probably not a Fannie Mae thing.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely not a family thing.
yeah, so yeah,
Yeah, let me
tell me
talk
about
a
the
little bit
loan that you used.
about the loan process and also about the getting to close that. So, one thing I didn't mention is this property was 86% vacant when we purchased the property. So we came in with a highly vacant property. Now, that in itself has risks, right? For us personally, we like that it was heavily vacant because it's actually allow us to come in and quickly rehab the property and then put new tenants in, and then really quick way to execute our value add and then be able to refinance. So for us, what we treat this as is actually kind of like a BRRRR strategy, but for 42 units. So that's how we also present that to our investors. I also mentioned that we syndicate this property and we actually closed this in 35 days. So we did all the paperwork, capital raise, and close on this property within 35 days, which is really fast for any syndication projects. And that require a lot of coordination with lenders, with investors, and with the attorney, right? So I'm super grateful for our investor to jump on this project. And the way that we presented our investors is the reason why we're bullish on this property, right, is because we already have very established experience in this market. We know what the rent could be like. We already have construction team. We have executed multiple burst properties already in this market. And the way the underwriting check out is because we have so much equity, we actually could return our investor capital at the refinance point within 18 months. So we actually was looking to return the majority of our investor capital at the refinance point at 18 months. So again, right, balancing that risk and reward. This is high risk for them. So the ability for them to get their capital back so quickly and still maintaining the ownership was it's worth the trade-off for the risk for them. So that's how we kind of structured this deal. And we definitely went in with a hard money loan so that we could actually have the rehab in budget to rehab all 42 units and then put new tenants in and then refinance at the 18 months. Here's another drama because of course there's lots of drama in this process. So we went with a lender that was going to fund 85% loan to cost, right? Which is great. We only had to put up 15% and we could save a lot of capital for the reserve. Okay, so 12 days to go. We just got our appraisal back and we were so happy because here we go. Like our bidding was 2.7. Appraisal was coming back with an as is at 3.9 and then an ARV of like 5.6, close to 6. So we're like so happy for ourselves and for our investors that say yes on this deal, right? We're so happy. And then the lender asked, hey, where is your outer survey? And we're like, what? And so for those listeners who are not familiar with outer survey, is a survey for boundaries, for like the boundaries of the building. And outer survey is a longer process because it's more specific. So usually outer survey takes about 4 weeks. And here we are with 10 days to close. And it looks like our lender won't be able to close. So here we are fully in our problem solving mode and figuring out, okay, what do we do from here? Because at this point, we have almost $600,000 in earnest money deposit, our own money in earnest money deposit that is no longer refundable, absolutely non-refundable. So we have almost 600K on the line and our lender is not able to close. So here is a huge lesson learned through this process, right? I'm going to touch on the lesson learned first. Whenever you talk to a new lender, always ask for two things. One, what is their closing list? What is it that they need to close? And then two, always sit down with them and ask, like, hey, in your experience, how long does it take to get any of these things done? And then are these things depending on one another, right? If we had asked these two questions, we would have known that this lender, even though they say they could fund deal within 30 days, that there's no chance they could actually fund this deal in 30 days. They were a national lender, and for for Pennsylvania specifically, titles does not run a survey report. They insure the title in lieu of survey. So this is where they thought title was gonna order survey, and so they're like, yeah, we can do that. But in fact, title was not ordering survey. Okay, so here we are, 10 days to go, and no lender. So now what? 500, 600K on the line. Now what? So what we did is that we went back to our second lender. So this is where I want to stress that the lesson learned here is that it's very important to build relationship with everyone in the real estate world, and that you want to make sure that you have the relationship built. So we went back to our second lender who was already familiar with the deal, and we asked them to be like, hey, could you fund this? So they got all their team on board, and it was amazing to work with. They got all their teams on board. They asked the other lender to release the appraisal, also drama there, but we asked the other lender to release the appraisal that all team worked through. We were online working from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., getting everything in as humanly fast as possible. And their team was just amazing to work with. Like their lawyers was in Florida, and this is one day before closing, and Florida was getting a hurricane, and the lawyer was getting evacuated, and she was like, hey, I am getting evacuated, but like I'll be back to work on this tonight. Like, no worries, we'll get this done. So like we're just like super, super grateful that their team was like amazing and that they really put everything together to get this to close. So a lot of lesson learned throughout this project, right? Ask the lender for the closing list, ask what these lists, how long anything of these items on this list would take, and always keep the relationship with anyone you talk to, because they could support you, you could support them, and it's very important to build and nurture relationships in the real estate world. But yeah, we got to close 35 days, and yeah, we are smack in the middle of the construction process right now.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
So exciting.
That's crazy. You can write a whole book about that. Well, you should. Yeah, you just straight up should.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Well,
Lot of
congratulations. That sounds extremely
Thank
successful.
you.
And I think, I mean, as brokers ourselves, I echo that. Don't think anyone has, the job done. I think the quieter the escrow is, the more alarmed you should be. So definitely ask for those lender lists and what everybody needs in order to get their job done. Absolutely, 100%. Okay, cool. Awesome. I thank you so much for that. And we'll link all of these. Well, first of all, we'll link all of the websites that you talked about earlier in our show notes. And how can our listeners find you and ask you more questions about this process if they need to?
Yeah, you can find my website, onerivercapital.com. That is spelled out OEONE, rivercapital.com. I am on Instagram and Facebook at that Salsa Investor, and salsa as in the dance. And yeah, I am there, happy to chat further, always happy to share more information about the process.
I love that.
Cool.
So, the salsa investor, we didn't even get to touch on the salsa part, but as you were, all right, this is the bonus content. Anita's like, look at me like, Tiffany, Anita, we're at the end of the episode. We've got like 7 minutes left. We're going to talk about salsa dancing.
Salsa dancing, the lifestyle.
Well, everything you talked about, like there's so many steps and nuances to it. And you mentioned in the last episode, salsa dancing is like having a conversation, right, with your dance partner. I think you can make a metaphor there, right, to
For
the
sure.
negotiation process and like
Oh my
the
gosh.
reaction and the talk
Yeah.
and the give and take.
And
See?
the give and take, right? All that jazz. Yeah. I really think, yeah, dancing for salsa, it is a conversation, right? It's a give and take. And I think everything in real estate is a conversation, right? Real estate is so relationship based, right? From you to your investors, from you to colleagues, lenders, brokers, all that jazz, or salsa, all that salsa.
They're all your
There we
dance
go.
partners. They're all
They're
different
all
dance
dance
partners.
partner. Yeah, you gotta have this conversation, always dancing in the conversation, and just be able to be open. And yeah, this is why I love salsa. Like I could have a salsa dance with anyone that even if I don't know their actual language, we could share dance. And the nice thing about salsa, which I was so hooked on it, was that there's no one dance that is like the same. Like you could dance with the same partner, but the conversation is always different because it's always in the moment, it's spontaneous, and it's song. So yeah, it's always so fun.
It's like a real estate deal. None is ever the same.
None
And
is
no
ever the
dance is
same.
ever the same.
Look at you,
It's
Tiffany,
always
with
something-
all these
That's why it's
metaphors.
so fun. No, it's not all the time, guys.
Never boring. I
That's
would
why
say
it's
that.
so
It's never
sexy.
boring.
Real estate is so sexy, just like salsa dancing. No.
It was that.
That should be my tagline. Making real estate sexy.
I love that we kept it on brand because you're the salsa investor. Yeah, sprinkle that into your marketing. I love it.
Yes, I am all for that. Yeah, I am all for. If you check out my Instagram, there'll be video of me like dancing as I'm like explaining real estate things.
What? See?
Yeah,
I told you. There's so many correlations.
like
I'm-
dancing me in there.
I was
I
I
also
need to get on
wanna
this
point-
whole thing.
I also want to point to like how, as you mentioned before, like we're all dynamic people and we'll all have our passion that real estate allow us to spend time on, right? And I do want to stress and make sure that everyone understand that, yes, you can always use real estate and grow real estate to build your passive income so that you can have time to spend with your family, to spend on your hobbies, to travel, whatever that is, right? But I also want to make sure people don't wait to spend time on their passion. Like, I want to make sure people don't have the mentality of like, oh, one day when I make it, then I will salsa, or I will draw, I'll be a comedian. Like, don't have that mentality of like, I'm going to wait until I am XYZ to do that. Like, this is your life. So like, if you love your passion, like go for it. Like, I think you will find a way to support your passion even when you have a W-2 and you figure out all your real estate things, right? I start dancing when I was having W-2 and figuring out real estate. So I just want to make sure people understand that they don't have to meet a requirement to live the life that they want to live.
You're
Love
getting
that.
me all teary-eyed. Yang.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We're so thank you for that extra tidbit as well. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks,
Hey,
Yang.
much,
thank you so much for
Yang.
having me.
Thanks for listening. Here's one last note from our lovely sponsors.
Hey, SARE Ladies listeners, Tony the CPA Dude here, also your resident SARE Tax Bro. And with your lovely host, they came up with some great ideas. So Miss Tiffany and Miss Anita here came up with the tax workout plan. So we're gonna help you get cut up on your taxes, also gonna help you cut up on your own body. So just like working out, taxes is a monthly thing. You can't ignore it, otherwise you're gonna fall off the cliff. So with the code SARE Ladies, we're gonna give you a nice healthy discount, and we're also gonna give the SARE Ladies a kickback just to help support their podcast. I've had a fun time being on their podcast a couple times this year. They've done great. I really wanna see them blow up in 2023. So with your support with this creative tax workout plan and also a workout plan in general, we're gonna help you transform your life in 2023. So mention the code SARE Ladies when you talk to me. You can email me at Tony@the CPA Dude, text me at 928 CPA Dude. TikTok's the CPA Dude, website's the CPADude.com. Everything's the CPA Dude. So SARE Ladies is your special code here, and let's make this year great.
Thank you for tuning in to the SARE Ladies podcast hosted by Anita Wong and Tiffany Lee. Special thanks to Subtle Asian Real Estate, LLC, our parent company.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review or follow SARE Ladies on Spotify and Instagram at Subtle Real Estate. You can also click on our show notes to subscribe to our newsletters to stay on top of our news and upcoming events. Until next time, Pod Squatters.